Hello, everyone. Nice to see you, dear friends, blessed community members. So wonderful to have you for our weekly Shanti in place meditation and Dharma talk. Thank you for being here. We'll allow for just a few more moments for folks who may be joining us, but let's take this time to get ourselves situated and prepare, as we always do, for our guided meditation. So if you haven't already done so, I want to invite you to take a comfortable seat, a seat of ease, of gentleness. Sometimes we have this strange idea that meditation practice or any spiritual practice has to be about causing ourselves discomfort or dis-ease, and it's quite the opposite. We want to lean into a space of ease, a space of gentleness, a space of bringing comfort and healing energy to our bodies, to our minds, to our emotional states. And at the same time, we want to find that seat, that posture, physically and metaphorically, that is not only comfortable, but that allows us to be fully present and alert. That puts us, if you're familiar with this language of yoga philosophy, that puts us into as sattvic as a state as possible. Sattvic here means a state of goodness, of lucidity, of clarity, of focus. That's very different than simply a state that we can fall asleep in. That's called tamas. That's also necessary. For instance, at night, when we go to sleep, we are embracing that energy of rest, that energy of total relaxation. But with meditation, we're doing something a little bit different. So taking a moment now to find whatever that space of sattva is for you, whatever that space of comfort and ease and yet focus and presence is for you. For some of us, it just means adjusting ourselves. I'm going to adjust myself a little bit more deeply into my chair. If you're sitting on the floor, maybe it's just readjusting so your sit bones are more intentionally making contact with your pillow or with the ground below. And if you haven't already done so, you're welcome to keep your camera on or off, but I want to invite you to either close your eyes if you feel comfortable closing the eyes, or soften your gaze if that feels more accessible and comfortable to you. We're going to begin our meditation as we generally do with 3 intentional, deep inhales and exhales together, 3 deep breaths together. That helps to ground us, to locate us, and even to bring some unity. We may all be practicing individually, but to tie us together in our intention and in our practice. And today, what I want us to do is, for some of us, this is already a part of our practice. For others, it may be something newer. But I want to invite you to bring counting of the breath into your practice. So we'll do this 3 times. We'll take a deep breath in, and I want to invite us, and I'll count along for us. But I want to invite us to breathe in deeply for a count of 4, to hold that breath for a count of 4, and then on the exhale to release that breath either through the nose or through the mouth, softly through the mouth, for a count of 6. And so we'll do that 3 times. If the numbers and the counting is a distraction for you, feel free to tune that part out and just do what works for you. But for many of us, this counting breath helps us to be a little bit more intentional and a little bit more present to our breath. So again, closing the eyes or softening the gaze as we feel comfortable. We'll begin. Taking a nice deep breath in through the nostrils for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding now for 4 counts. 2, 3, 4, and releasing. 3, 4, 5, 6. Once more, breathing in. 3, 4, holding. 2, 3, 4, releasing. 3, 4, 5, 6. One last time. Holding and releasing. We can continue to count the breath this way if it feels natural and accessible to us. We can adjust the count to something that maybe feels a little bit more natural, or we can let go of counting altogether and simply observe the breath in whatever rhythm or pattern it finds. Continuing to notice the breath, observing, simply taking note of anything that arises, of what the inhalation feels like, of what the sensation of holding the breath for some time feels like. Of the sensation, the texture, the energy of letting go, releasing, breathing out, perhaps breathing out any tension or any tightness that we may have noticed. For some of us, those few seconds or moments of holding between the inhale and the exhale is a time of maybe more acutely noticing any tension or tightness. For many of us, it's a bit of a heightened awareness of any discomfort, and allowing that to happen. That's exactly as it should be. We can take those opportunities to really be good observers of our bodies, of our minds, of our thoughts, of our breath. To observe or to listen to what our bodies and our minds are telling us. Perhaps they're pointing out some areas that need just a little bit more attention or even a little bit more affection on this Monday. And if it's accessible to us, allowing ourselves, giving ourselves that permission to adjust anything we need to adjust, to soften any areas that feel hardened or tight or holding tension. And if we were able to soften those areas with just a little bit more intentionality, a little bit more presence of mind, we can breathe out whatever residual tensions may have been awakened or dislodged. If we'd like to, we can even breathe it out in an exaggerated way, even a comical way. We can sigh loudly if that feels right to us right now. We can be thankful for the mute button on our Zoom calls that allows us that extra degree of privacy to just make whatever sound we want to make. If we feel inspired to just even vocally, just sighing out any tension, any anxiety, any tightness, anything that's preventing us from just being comfortable and at ease in this moment. It may be communicating something to us, but in this moment, if we feel like we can just sigh it out. We can just breathe it out. And if there's tension that we don't feel like we can soften or smooth out, if there's tension or tightness or discomfort that's simply asserting itself and there's really nothing to do in this moment about it, that's okay too. We can just notice it, observe it, name it. We can honor it even as a gift in its own way. That's trying to tell us something in this moment, that's ultimately helping us to grow and to improve. We can name it and honor it, and then just return to this present moment. Return to noticing the breath. For these final few moments of our meditation together, let's intentionally and even physically practice increasing our capacity for acceptance, stretching ourselves open just a little bit. And so for some of us, this may even feel like the physical sensation of the chest widening, the shoulders rolling back a little bit. Maybe the spine lifts, whatever it is for you, however it looks or feels for you. But just intentionally opening ourselves up to a greater state of acceptance. One way we can do this, and some of us may already be doing this, is to take our hands, open up our palms, and place our hands at our knees or in our lap, open. Sometimes we place our hands down to ground ourselves, and that's also a beautiful meditation. But today I want to invite you to hold your palms open towards the sky, towards the ceiling, towards the room around you, towards space and time and its wonderful, infinite vastness. Just noticing the sensation of that physical act of openness, of acceptance, of inviting the universe, or perhaps if it's part of our spiritual path or understanding, inviting the divine to give to us whatever we are meant to receive in this moment. And if it feels accessible to us, if it feels comfortable for us and safe for us to do so, we can ask to receive whatever we are meant to receive in this moment, over and above whatever it is we expect or desire or feel entitled to. We may have so many things that we want, or even that we feel that we need. We may have so many things or situations that we're looking forward to, that we're anticipating. But in this moment, can we open ourselves to accept whatever it is that we're meant to accept in this moment? If we'd like to now, for our closing deep breath together, we can bring our hands to our hearts, or the region of our hearts. If we'd like to leave them in our laps, we can do that as well. But for many of us, if we feel inspired to bring our hands to our hearts, almost as a way of sealing ourselves, holding tightly whatever it is that we are receiving in this moment, and accepting it not just in theory, not just in the head space, but accepting it in the heart space. So with our hands connecting to our hearts, or at our knees or in our laps, open to possibility. Let us now take one final deep breath in together. We can hold the breath for a couple of beats and then release the breath, breathing out, either chanting or hearing the sacred syllable Om, a sound of completeness, of infinite space and time, of our own divine nature. Breathing in deeply. Gently now opening the eyes or widening the gaze. And for some of us, what feels like a really nice way of doing this is just to rub the hands together, to rub the palms together and create some warmth. And then bringing those warmed hands or palms up to the face and blinking our eyes open into our hands. So thank you all so much. I hope everyone had a nice experience with that, whether it was something that felt newer to your practice or whether it was something that aligned or resonated with the practice you already have. I know it's something that's very much on my mind and on my heart today. This idea of acceptance of whatever I'm being given in this moment is a gift, and it is what is meant to be before me in this moment. I wanted to talk briefly about this, so I'm going to share my screen here for our Dharma talk portion. It's a short one, but I just wanted to touch on this idea of acceptance. And one way that acceptance is spoken about in yoga philosophy is this idea of acceptance as contentment. And in fact, peace as a state of mind, Shanti as a state of mind, what we in this series are working towards is very much tied to this idea of cultivating a state of contentment. When the mind, the manas, is misaligned, as we've talked about in the past, when the mind is misaligned and is not connected to buddhi, to that voice of inner guidance, of inner wisdom, of discernment. And instead, when the mind is easily carried away, I think it was last week or the week before, we were speaking about, Krishna gives this analogy in the Gita of the mind that is misaligned being carried away just like a boat is carried away by a strong wind. So when we have that misaligned mind, when we have that mind that's not guided by and rooted in discernment, then we can very easily be carried away to the past. And it shows up in different ways. It can show up as lamentation. It can show up as regret. I would have done this. I should have done that. I could have said this. I should have said that. Right? I'm experiencing some of that today in a slightly different context. But I'm experiencing something in a situation where my mind keeps wanting to take me back to a previous conversation and to the things I could have said or should have said in that conversation. And what that does is that takes me out of the present moment. That takes my awareness out of the present moment and drags me into this past of lamenting, of regretting, or perhaps even of pining for some imagined better state than what I'm in now. Or my mind can do the same thing. The misaligned mind can do the same thing, just carrying me into the future, right? And whether that shows up as anxiety or worry or anticipation or hankering, desiring, whatever particular um, kind of manifestation it takes, depending on our situations or depending on our personal psychologies. The point is, it still takes us out of this moment. It may be important, it may be real in as much as, yes, there may be important things that are on the horizon tomorrow. But when my mind goes there, my mind cannot be present to this moment. And so the aligned mind, the mind that is regulated by and guided lovingly by the buddhi, by the inner guide, the inner voice of discernment and wisdom, that mind allows us to be present. When that mind is present, then we can accept this moment with real contentment. Sometimes we hear the word contentment and we think it has to be some kind of state of a kind of like glossy happiness, that I have to have this like big sort of fake grin on my face because, oh no, I'm content, everything is good, everything is fine. That's not the kind of contentment we're talking about. We're not talking about contentment as this state of just, ignorance is bliss or something. So it's like I just have to pretend that there are no problems and everything's good. When we speak about contentment in this context, what we're speaking about is contentment because we are so radically present, we are so fully present to this moment that we recognize that the past is the past, the future is the future. And in this moment, exactly what is meant to be happening is what is happening. In this moment, whatever is coming to me is exactly what I need, either for my growth or my development or for my care, whether it is seemingly a moment of celebration and joy or seemingly a moment of challenge and difficulty. If I can be present to it, then I accept it for what it is. And when I accept it for what it is, I don't need to try. I can let go of the desire to change it, to manipulate it, to be somewhere else. I can be present to it in this moment. Um, right? There's that famous saying, which has kind of become a cliche, of the reason it's called the present is because it is a gift. And it sounds corny, right? But the fact of the matter is, if I have this state of awareness, and particularly for those of us who have a kind of a devotional aspect to our spiritual practice, we really see this from in Sanskrit, what's called bhakti, that if everything in this moment is actually a gift from my divine beloved, my divine source, or if that's not part of our spiritual vocabulary, just from existence, from the universe. If everything in this moment, if this moment itself is sent to me by that divine beloved or by that benevolent universe, then it is a gift for me. And just as a gift is, there's some mystery, there's some unknown, there's some uncertainty. That's what makes it fun, right? Little children, they often enjoy, or even adults for that matter, but especially children, they enjoy the gift all the more when it's something to unwrap, when it's something to open, when it's something to discover, when it's a surprise. Why? Because in that act of discovering, of unwrapping, we can especially enjoy the mystery. We can enjoy the excitement, the enthusiasm. It becomes something. It becomes something that's quite that draws us even nearer to the giver of the gift. Right? It heightens the excitement and the enthusiasm. Um, and then as we discover it and as we open ourselves to it, whether it is what we asked for or not, whether it's what we expected or not, if it is a gift from our beloved, then we're we're content to receive it. We're happy to receive it. We're open to whatever the possibilities of that gift are, whether they're apparent to us or not. In the Gita, Krishna speaks about this state of contentment. He says, um, content in accepting whatever comes of its own accord, transcending these notions of duality, of success and failure, being free of envy, right? What is envy? It takes us out of this present moment again, and it causes us to think, well, the grass is greener on that other side. I will be happy, I will be content when I have what Anne has, or what Tina has, or what Mashad has. Instead of recognizing the gift that Vineet has right now in front of him in this moment. Krishna says, when we can rise above that tendency to envy and to covet, when we can rise above these dualities of, you know, victory and defeat, success and failure, when we can remain balanced and accept whatever comes of its own accord without feeling the need to manipulate and control it. When we do that, Krishna says, nibhadyate, we are not bound. One remains unbound, even in the midst, kritvapi, even in the midst of so much action. Even in the we can be very much engaged in the world. We can be in the midst of the most trying, complex situations, and yet we can remain unbound. We can be free of that entanglement, that bondage, that feeling of I'm a victim of my circumstances. I'm being swayed from past lamentation to future hankering and worrying and anxiety. Um, no, I don't need to be bound by those things. So Santosha is accepting whatever comes on its own terms. It's rising above the duality of success and failure and envy. And it's freeing ourselves from the state of bondage. It's real freedom. It's freedom in acceptance of what comes to us. And as one of my teachers likes to say, in a state of content curiosity. I don't need to change this. I don't need to manipulate it. I don't need to even fight against it. It's not to say there aren't situations where we need to call out and recognize that unhealthy situations need to be addressed. But in this moment, if there's something that I can't change, if there's something that I can't control, if there's something that's coming of its own accord, as Krishna says in the Gita, if that's happening anyway, then why make myself and likely the people around me miserable by fighting it and by trying to change it? Why not try to cultivate this state of acceptance, this state of curiosity, this state of openness to whatever I am meant to learn, however I am meant to grow from this particular moment? So this is an invitation. We like to end with an invitation. This is an invitation to reflect on this in your own time, whether through meditation, through journaling, through whatever works for you, to be able to reflect on and even interrogate ourselves a little bit. Are we cultivating a state of santosha, a state of contentment? Are we choosing to see things in this moment as a gift? Or are we so locked into the past or the future that we're really robbing ourselves of the gift of this present moment? So we'll return to our gathering. I know some folks may need to leave, and that's absolutely fine. But for anyone who would like to stay and who is able to stay, if you've got any questions, thoughts, I'm very curious to hear how this is landing with you, where you find it resonates, where you find it might be easier said than done. So I want to turn it over to anyone who has any questions or comments.
Hi. I actually did have a question. Um, so basically, I was thinking kind of a lot you were mentioning about like the present was like in terms of like comparing it to like the future or past. I guess another thing I'm thinking about a lot lately is like present in terms of like where you're physically located versus like especially like online. Like do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I imagine you're kind of referring to as a student, right? Being like entirely virtual, not being able to be like physically back on campus, or physically in classes or with friends and things like that. Is that what you're kind of getting at, or not so
Yeah,
much?
or also just like present, like for example, like I'm at home, so like present like in my household, or like yeah, like because in some senses, like I was thinking of this like very analogously, like oh, like in terms of like not being present with like the present moment, but am I not being present with like my physical like surroundings, like like nature outside or like whatever.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And my take on it, but I'd love to hear what others think as well, is that um, first and foremost, presence is a state of mind, right? So I think our tendency sometimes is to look so much at the external circumstances and our surroundings, sometimes even physically and literally our surroundings. What building am I in? What room am I inside or outside? And our tendency sometimes is, for very understandable reasons, is to be so locked into those externals that we almost make our ability to be present dependent on them, isn't it? Like I can be really present when I'm in this space that is right. That's not to discount the power of spaces, but that's to say that at least drawing from this wisdom tradition, that first and foremost, it needs to be, like they say, it needs to be up here or in here. It needs to be a state where can I be present when I'm at home? Can I be present when I'm outside? Can I be present to being outside when I'm outside instead of, as sometimes happens with me, I'm outside, but my consciousness is inside. And then I'm inside and my consciousness is outside, right? So it gets like wild, right? Our minds can play these almost like it gets kind of trippy. Our minds play these games with us sometimes to keep us from that state of presence where it's like when I'm inside, all I'm thinking about is being outside. When I'm outside, all I'm thinking about is being inside. When I'm home, all I'm thinking about is being on campus. When I'm on campus, right? And it can just there's going to be no end to it because if we're not addressing the roots of contentment, acceptance, presence within, we'll always be sort of subject to there'll always be somewhere else that we could be. I don't know if that's exactly. I think I might be going a little a bit tangential to your question, but that's at least what's coming up for me right now. um, would anyone else like to share or perhaps suggest you know a
Yeah,
response?
hi. My name is Path. And how I take it is, to me, is more easy to look for Santosha when I am on a anxiety state, when I feel I'm not completely in the present by being on the past or in the future, as you were saying extremely well, how to feel the feeling of regretting what you did or did not, or what will be the future to come. On those circumstances, the thing that gives me peace is just to think you are where you need to be. And so I accept it. And by that, I feel completely released. There is nothing else I need to do other than carry on with my day and try to be the best I can at what I'm doing. But all that other part can be released, kind of.
Yeah, thank you. I love this idea of just giving ourselves permission to release that other stuff. Not that it's not important in its own right. Something in the past may be very important, and we may need to go back and address it. Something in the future likely is very important, and we do need to take steps now. I'm not at all advocating that, we act irresponsibly, right? But in this moment, what am I meant to do? Um, there's this movie. Well, I think everyone probably is familiar with the movie Frozen, the animated movie. So there's a sequel to Frozen, Frozen 2, and in that movie, there's one particular line that I really appreciated and resonated with me, and I thought was quite um, resonant with my own sort of spiritual outlook and spiritual practice. And essentially, I'll paraphrase, but the line goes, um, in 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 any given situation, we just need to figure out what is the next right thing. So in this moment, what is the next right thing? Or what is, forget even next, but what is the right thing for Paz in this moment? What is the right thing for Mashad in this moment? What is the right thing for each and every one of us in this moment? If we're doing that, chances are, in a healthy way, if something in the past needs addressing, we'll be able to do it. In a healthy way, we can prepare for and equip ourselves for and be responsible for whatever is awaiting us in the future. But it doesn't take us out of our awareness in the present. Can I share one more thing with you? Maybe not one more, but can I share something else with you that's a little personal, but I just feel inspired to share it. Um, Yesterday, I took part in a conversation. It was actually a public conversation. It was on a podcast, and for reasons that I won't get into here, I won't bore you with the details. But it was kind of a difficult conversation. It was a very emotional conversation for me. It was very stressful in certain ways. I was aware that there was a kind of an audience to this, and so my ego was involved, and fears and insecurities and all this stuff, right? That comes from what we sometimes call crucial conversation. So this was like a crucial conversation, and it was a public one at that. So if I'm being honest, in the days, maybe even weeks leading up to this conversation, whenever I would sit down to meditate, and particularly my own personal meditation practice is very much based on a mantra meditation practice. So repeatedly, softly chanting a mantra as part of my meditation. When I would sit down to do this mantra meditation in the days, maybe even the week or two leading up to this conversation, as much as I would try to keep my awareness and my focus and my attention on the sound of the mantra or on each breath as it flows in and out, where I would find my mind going is towards this conversation, which at the time was existing somewhere in the future. And so what I would be doing is I would use that meditation time, even without intending it, and it would be like very frustrating because I didn't mean to, but where my mind would jump is I would start scripting that conversation. Okay, he's going to say this, you're going to say that, then you're going to say this, then you're going to make that point. And it made being present to my meditation so difficult, right? It was like humbling and embarrassing. And I thought, okay, well, after this conversation is over, at least one thing, where however the conversation goes, I'll be able to return to my meditation practice. And so the conversation happened. And this morning, I sat down to do my practice. And you know what my mind did? My mind started scripting, except this time it was just scripting what I should have said in the conversation and analyzing what he said and then what I said. And was that a good point? And how did I, and so my meditation this morning it was like the same damn thing. It was just scripting it in reverse. And it's really humbling because even those of us who have been at this meditation thing for a while, there's that tendency. That's what the mind does. So not that we want to beat up our minds or beat up ourselves for it, but let's recognize that and let's be really good friends to ourselves and to one another and remind ourselves and remind one another. We don't need to do that. We've been playing that game for so long. We don't need to constantly be jumping into the past and constantly be jumping into the future. Let's try our best sincerely and with intention to be present. And when we do that, contentment, it's I don't even think we need to artificially try to cultivate contentment. Contentment blossoms itself. It's just a natural byproduct, in one sense, of being in the present moment. And Angela, thank you for sharing in the chat box the quote that I was alluding to but didn't actually say. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. That is why it is called the present. So thank you for allowing me to share that. I know I got a little personal there, but I just wanted to speak my truth, so to speak. And thank you all for being here. We'll bring our time together to a close, but please do join us next week, if not sooner, for more opportunities to connect in community like this. Have a blessed rest of your day and a wonderful week to come. Take care, everyone.
You too. Bye.